And we are live. Hi, everybody. Happy Saturday. I was just on a live with my friends Julie Roginski, Taraset Mayer, and Michelle Kinney, where we talked about a lot of emotional components to what is going on right now. But I am joined on a Saturday instead of a Friday, thanks to my daughter's orthodontist, by my good friend and genius in all things, particularly foreign policy, Joel Rubin, author of the briefing book here on Substack. Hi, Joel.
Hey, Joe. Good morning. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Yeah, thanks for joining me on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
People are hopefully getting into their cups of coffee and finishing up breakfast or just about to start brunch, whatever it is. But the news doesn't stop, and what is happening to our State Department needs to be talked about. We're going to talk about what is the cuts to 15%, almost cuts in workforce to the State Department. We're going to talk about what was done with their rescissions to our soft power once again.
Right.
We're going to talk about Trump's weird sort of mini reversal on Ukraine and the implications of all of that. And we're going to, so grab a coffee, grab an orange juice, mimosa, whatever your poison. I'm doing a little double fist of a Starbucks energy drink and Nick's cup full of water. You pick your poison. But Joel,
Outstanding.
let's start with
Yeah.
the State Department. Let's start with this huge, massive, what is it, 1,400 people?
Yeah, about 1,300 folks. Love being with you, Joe, always. And hi, everybody. And I before rolling into it, I got to say, our Foreign Policy Fridays has the beer. Now I have the coffee. Um, and I have to say, I'm feeling really good because my almost 19-year-old daughter made a breakfast burrito while jamming out to Bad Bunny this morning. So life is good. Yes,
Okay.
yes. She cooked Maduro and black beans and rice and made me food. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm probably done for the rest of the day, actually.
That's awesome.
So if I'm a little slow, it's the breakfast burrito. Um, and I'll try to talk about this in a sort of very personal way as well for folks who may not be tracking me, right? Why would you be? But I worked at State for about 7 years in total. Started my career in the Clinton administration. I'm that old. For my first year in government, then was in the Bush administration as a civil servant. Came back in the Obama administration as a political appointee, and sort of have seen it throughout the years and love it as an entity. It's the prime agency of the U.S. government. It's the number one agency. It's the cabinet official who becomes president. If down the checklist of president, vice president, speaker of the House, then it's the Secretary of State. So it's our face to the world, and we just cut that face off by 15%. And we did it in a sledgehammery way. And I love to give you anecdotes that I'm hearing from people inside. We call it the building. When you work at State, you say the building, the building. So from inside the building, yeah, I'm hearing a lot and have a lot of friends and colleagues, as well as obviously former colleagues. It's been devastating. It's devastating for our country. It's devastating for our presence around the world. It's a gift to China. It undermines our ability to combat climate change, to prevent the spread of global diseases, of malaria. It enables our adversaries to build up relationships in regions like in Africa that we're now basically pulling away from. It undermines our future viability as an agency, because who's going to want to go work in a place like that where you fire people? There's so many levels to it. Now, let me just give you one anecdote that might crystallize it for folks about the inanity of this hack job to the State Department personnel, which is there's a bureau in the State Department that handles intelligence called the Bureau of Intelligence and Research, INR. And that bureau is actually a direct report to the Secretary of State. So they gather the information from State and from the other 17 intelligence agencies across the U.S. government that comprise the intelligence community, and they summarize it into intelligence reports that are well written and given to the Secretary. They're not. It's not like parts of the information. It's comprehensive. Well, there's a unit in there that handles Ukraine and Russia, which, as you know, Joe, is kind of like an interestingly important issue these days. There are a few things happening over there that the Secretary of State might want to know about.
Just a couple.
Well, that office was terminated.
But
but you can't make
but
it up.
but Joel, but also I just want to say hi to Dean Obadiah. Hi, Dean. He just joined. He's great. And
And
please
sorry
check out
for
his
laughing.
No.
Either
You
laugh
have
or
to laugh.
cry.
You have to laugh or you cry or you lose your fucking minds. And you know this stuff better than anybody. But my question, I come back to this question so often, Joel. Marco effing Rubio is as notoriously a hardliner on Vladimir Putin as just about anybody has ever been. And Marco Rubio is the one cutting these crucial departments that gather intelligence on Russia. So somebody, please, somebody. I don't want to give him any credit, but has his brain and his spine and his heart, have they all been ripped out of his body that he and I was talking, I've had this conversation a couple times this week. I actually talked to Malinowski at the beginning of the week.
Oh, good.
Oh God, he shed a lot of
Tom's
light on this.
fantastic.
Amazing. I talked to your friend Jimmy Raskin also the other day. I talked to Senator King. This came up every time because this is so freaking dismantling to our national security, to our safety, to our awareness, to obviously like our intelligence. But why, Joel? Why would Marco Rubio? Why would he do this? Why would he do this?
Why? I have a word for you. You may be familiar with it. It's called politics.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that, but I call it cuckoldingness, but that's fine.
There are a couple of things, and they link to some of the things that we'll be talking about this morning, and themes that have been ongoing for the past half year in the foreign affairs, in the destruction of the foreign affairs capacity of the United States government by the Trump administration. And that's it. There's really not a strong domestic political constituency for American foreign policy. There's a lot of people who benefit from it, clearly, and there's clearly a lot of people who care about it. But when you think about strong, powerful constituencies, you think about the business community, you think about the ag community, you think about, frankly, people who are focused on high tech and crypto, even, and there's like they've political power, and they use that power. In foreign affairs, there's not that. There's just not. There's some core constituencies that care about specific countries, like the Cuban Americans who are very passionate about Cuba, the pro-Israel community, Jewish Americans, the Palestinians Americans now. Like they're making political noise, but it's very discreet. And so when you look at an agency like state, it doesn't have a lot of power politically. And it always relied upon the sort of good offices and policy objectives of bipartisan support from Capitol Hill. And Marco Rubio was part of that. But when push came to shove and Trump comes in and he has this guy named Russ Vought, who's like a Neanderthal. He wants to turn us back into basically the Middle Ages as far as governance goes, which is really weird because he and I have been in town the same amount of time. I don't know where he's been hanging out, where he came up with his ideas. And so,
Yeah,
they want to kill
Miller's
this.
basement, probably.
I mean, what the hell? So these guys, they want to kill these agencies, and there's little political resistance. And so it comes from on high. And so Rubio's stuck. And then, of course, Rubio isn't going to really say no because he wants the brass ring. And, who's going to really cry about the loss of a couple of thousand bureaucrats, right? Well, you know who's going to cry? I'll stop after this. You know who's going to cry? The American citizen who's stranded overseas and has nobody at the embassy to call, or the American citizen here in Topeka who calls because their brother is missing in Laos and they can't find the body, or the company that's trying to get intellectual property protections from France and there's no economic officer at the embassy to protect them. The list goes on and on and on of things that we do as a country overseas through the State Department that are subtle and that matter, and now they're going to be gone.
And to quote Senator King this week, who quoted Jim Mattis
boy.
said, if you don't fund the State Department, you're gonna have to buy me more bullets.
which is what they're doing.
Right. Exactly. So that's peace through strength? Is my wait. Do I have that right? Because the math
So
isn't that
apparently, Donald Trump was the anti-war candidate, and now he's
oh,
got a budget request of $1 trillion to the Pentagon.
what what? Also, I don't know if you saw this, but the DoD is like getting into bed with a private contractor or something where it's like we're gonna actually be. I don't know if you saw that story. I'm gonna find it, but it's like
Well,
almost as if
yeah.
we're gonna be in a business now, the Department of Defense. I don't know. I feel like that seems all counterintuitive, but let's
But
still stick with state
but
because yeah,
here's the thing also, there's human wreckage. I gotta tell you, on a personal level, I recognized a lot of the faces of the State Department diplomats who were fired, who they did it after the departure last week. When they walked out of the building, there was what they call a clap out, where
yeah,
people applauded them for their service. And I recognize those faces. Um, for people who go into foreign affairs and foreign service work, it's not just a job. It truly is. I know it sounds cliche, but it truly is a life choice. It's like joining the military. It's a 20 to 30-year commitment to serve the American people overseas, move country to country, uproot your kids and your family every couple of years. That is service, and they do it as patriots on behalf of our country. And they weren't just fired summarily and tossed out arbitrarily and not based upon personnel evaluation. It was just based upon sort of ideological fixation. But now, what do they do? Right?
right,
I mean, this is like identity, and these are people who gave to all of us and were treated like dog shit. All right.
yeah.
And that's just beneath us as a country. That's not what we do to the people who are there to serve and protect us. And that's what also occurred.
No, and you're right. They are patriots, and to every single person that was impacted by this and other unbelievably disgusting cuts to every program from the EPA to FEMA
Oh
to the
God.
NIH, et cetera, right? They all signed up to serve our country, and they're not political appointees. And Tom Malinowski was explaining to me about some of these, or all of these firings, like something to touch on what you said, that they move around from country to country, and he said that these are people who've just been moving to offices, and it just if there was one of the offices that was cut, it was
That's
just your
right.
bad luck. Like it
That's
wasn't
right.
anything that anyone ever did to warrant their own termination from a job they
Right.
had spent decades in to protect and serve our country. It just happened to be the wrong place at the wrong time, and it's your number that got called.
What does this remind you of in another part of our current politics and policy right now? I hear echoes of, I hear of how we're doing immigration.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah,
They're not going after, remember, the promise was, Trump was,
yeah.
we'll go after the bad guys, we'll go after the criminals. Now they're just rounding up everybody, including American citizens, and
Mhm.
then we'll figure it out later. It's the same thing with the government firings of, you want to save money, be more efficient. Okay, we get it. But they're not just going after the low performers, they're going after everybody.
Yeah.
And, there are a lot of instances, and it's in the press, this is not like hidden information, of people being asked to come back
Yes.
because they were fired incorrectly.
Yep.
This is
FAA,
the hut. This
NOAA.
is
Yeah.
so bad.
Yeah.
This is so badly done.
Yeah.
Um,
Like,
by the
that's the
way,
point. Brooklyn Dad Defiant has this funny thing that he says. Majid says that he's always learned that you measure twice and cut once, right? This is not what the Trump administration does. They don't measure at all, and then they just go in with a freaking machete and a blowtorch.
and the thing is it's like, to what Tom was saying, Tom Malinowski, so for folks who aren't aware of Tom's background, Tom worked on foreign policy for a number of years as an activist, and then was the Assistant Secretary of State for Democracy and Human Rights and Labor in the Obama administration. I served alongside him in a different bureau then. Basically, that bureau has been around for decades with bipartisan support to promote democracy and human rights around the world, things like that.
Oh, trivial things
That
like that.
trivial things like democracy, promotion, human rights, right? That bureau is now gone.
Gone. gone.
Gone.
And so much of what they're doing is antithetical to what we think of as, American values. But it's so much more insidious than that, because we're dismantling relationships that we have around the world that have taken decades to establish. And it's not like we're leaving and no one else is coming in and taking over in our footsteps. That is not at all the case. Like you said earlier, this has been a huge gift to our adversaries like China. And
That's right.
and and we, on one out of one side of his mouth, he'll talk about like China's this and China's that, and we're gonna tariff the shit out of China, and we can't lose to China. And then the other side of his mouth, it's like, here, China, take all of our soft power. Go right on ahead. We're just gonna serve it up to you on a platter. Well, we're gonna serve it up to you on a platter as we burn the food and the birth control, hundreds of thousands, if not more,
Oh my
millions
God.
of dollars worth of stuff we're gonna either burn or let rot instead of letting people have it. But we're handing China and other bad actors all of this soft power, and like how did they not? Do they care?
You know, it I think the short answer is no. I think that there's literally a lack of interest in anything related to American involvement overseas at all, across the board. And um
Unless
it
you're a
is
white
it
South African farmer.
unless you're a white South African farmer and you can, or unless they're paying. By the way, they're paying all these massive tariffs. We're getting a lot of revenue coming in. Just wait until the courts rule that they're illegal, and we have to start paying back all of those companies, which will happen. But to your point, I think there's this strategic issue that over the long arc of time matters. So it doesn't matter like today or tomorrow, immediately, in a way that you and I feel right now. But it obviously matters a significant amount. And just you wait. Investments made in the early 90s, in the mid 90s, by the State Department, for example, building up relationships in Eastern Europe, which Tom actually knows quite a lot about, building up those relationships after the Soviet Union collapsed, where we then had assistance programs through a thing called USAID, which no longer exists, and we would put money into promoting things like democracy through a bureau that no longer exists, and we would then engage political leaders in Eastern Europe, like Václav Havel and the Czech Republic and other people, to help guide them and advise them on how to write constitutions and build political parties and create a free press and move towards a liberal market that had economic vitality, build a university system to train the next generation of leaders inside their country. All that stuff we were involved in. And we now have a stable chunk of dozen plus countries in Eastern Europe who are allies of the United States because of those investments made 3 decades ago. They are now holding the line against Russia. They are new market opportunities for the United States. They are reliable votes in the United Nations. So in 1992, 4 or 5, I'm sure there were people like, why are we wasting money? Why are we spending money on these foreigners? Who cares? It's over there. It's not here. America first, right? The Pat Buchanans of the world.
Yeah.
Well, they were fucking morons. And basically, if we listened to them, those countries would all have been the renewed Soviet states. But we didn't. We listened to ourselves and our values as Americans, our principles, and our values created our power in that part of the world. And so imagine all that being lost. That's sort of what we're looking at now over time. The loss will be so huge because we've decided to exit the playing field of shaping the world around us.
Or it mirrors what they're doing here at home domestically, you know what I mean? But it's also one of the things I want to talk about too, because it's another prong of all of this, and Congress self-gelding, punching themselves in the dick to be more precise. The recisions that they passed this week that gave more power, by the way, to the executive, to this motherfucker who has no interest whatsoever in maintaining our relationships around the world, except that he wants to still give Putin more time. We'll talk about that, but let's talk about what was in this rescissions package related to USAID, and what it says about giving the executive more power to cutting things that have been appropriated in terms of our, again, these are, for me, I think these are national security issues.
Yeah, yeah. Look, so I'll top line it. I'm sure you've talked to your audience about this, but basically, what a rescissions package is a request from the president, from the executive branch, back to Congress to claw back and delete funds that had already been appropriated by Congress and signed into law earlier. So the big, because you recall over the first half year of this administration, many decisions they made, especially on foreign aid, to not spend money. It's called impoundment, and that is an illegal act. And so the impoundment fight was underway. But if you can move a rescissions package forward that is integrating the programs that were impounded, and that rescissions package passes, becomes law, then the impoundment issue is moot. It's because Congress supports the pullback of those programs, so it's not illegal.
Programs that they funded.
Not illegal.
Right.
Profile encouraged Mitch McConnell, voted against the rescission package. It lost 50-50 with the tie breaks advance of 51-50. The other two Republicans, Lisa Murkowski. Oh no, I didn't vote for that, did I?
Yes,
And
you did.
and I gotta say, Susan Collins, to her credit's been pretty consistently voting the right way. For folks who don't track it, Susan is the chairwoman of the Appropriations Committee. She's the decider of all these funds, and basically nobody on that committee followed her. Basically, um, that's real power and authority there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so,
They're
so
more
when she
afraid
tells
of Donald Trump. Yeah.
but so like when she tells Maine voters, "Hey, I'm the chairwoman of appropriations," they should think nobody cares. That like literally is on your committee. Nobody listens to you anyways.
Yeah.
Um, so the rescissions now are that's like it's like the death blow to USAID, right? It's like the final punch when the body is on the ground, barely breathing, and health programs, environment programs, across the board cuts. They had to put in. You'll love this in the in the in the generosity of their religiously inspired hearts, they restored funds to end AIDS in Africa. How kind of them to keep a program going that saved about 30 million lives, that was championed by George W. Bush and lobbied for by the evangelical right. And they just killed it a couple months ago. And then they had to scramble to figure out how to not kill something that was a multi-million lifesaver. This is the pro-life members
Yeah.
that we have.
Oh yeah.
So, so they found the money for that. Good God.
Yeah.
And that's probably because of the word that we used before, politics, right? Like that might even be a bridge too far for their base voters. And it was, I'm sure the evangelical Christian community was alongside Bono,
Yeah.
was the difference maker on getting that AIDS relief program done. But that's about it.
Mhm.
And so now, Russ Vought said more rescissions to come.
Yeah.
So we'll
Or why
see.
would they stop? Like, why would they stop? They have, Congress has shown Donald Trump repeatedly, right, that they will continue to bend over and,
And the Supreme Court has validated all of this.
exactly, which is, again, insane. But that's why we're now seeing him talking about, well, I think they announced their cuts to the EPA, or that they're imminent. They're basically going to shut the EPA down. And,
Yeah.
what's his name? What's that guy's name?
Lee Zeldin.
The Zeldin, God, so sycophantic. I mean, my God, dear leader, freaking Lee Zeldin. But yeah, so let's close with something that I find very interesting, and I was actually shocked by, which I try not to use that word whenever it comes to Donald Trump, but I guess more surprised. I don't know. I'm never either completely with him, but this week, I forget what day it was now because they all blend together. Some day ending in Y. Probably towards the beginning of the week, I think. Right?
Monday. Yeah.
Monday. Okay, so he announced that the United States will not be supplying weapons directly to you, Patriots, et cetera, directly to Ukraine. However, we are going to let NATO buy these weapons and weapon systems, and then NATO can give them to Ukraine. And Trump talked in that meeting in terms I haven't heard him use too often that were critical, let's just say, of Vladimir Putin. He hesitated to call him, I forget, an assassin or something like that. But it was still more in the direction of assisting Ukraine and speaking out against Putin than I've seen him do. So I want to talk about why you think he got there, because he said, we have these beautiful phone calls, and then we hang up, and then I see that my wife says, darling, darling. Now he has bombed a new town. And as soon as we hang up, and he says 2-3 times this happens to you. I mean, it's talking like him, like it's an ex-boyfriend or some shit. But what do you think? First of all, what do you think of what he announced and what they announced? What does that mean for Ukraine? What does it mean for Putin? Does it mean anything in terms of dissuading him, because he hasn't slowed down since that meeting? And yeah, let's just jump in there.
Well, I'm really glad that he's listening to the State Department's Office of Intelligence on Russia and Ukraine rather than his wife. Oh, wait a minute.
Whoops. Oops. See about that.
Why have a government?
Yeah.
I think this actually, like, why have a government? You don't need it anyways. What the hell?
The story's bullshit because he said darling. Whenever he says darling,
Melania, what should I do? Think about the
she's
children.
in New York fucking our security guard, and she's definitely not talking to you about bombing. But anyways, moving on.
Oh, the twists and turns of this drama. Is it a coincidence? Not that I'm a conspiracy theorist, but is it a coincidence that the Epstein thing just blew up after that?
Yeah.
Okay, so Putin,
yeah.
Look, let's just take it on policy. On policy, it's the right call to provide additional military aid to Ukraine. It should not have been this difficult. There is no peace through strength. There is no, I'll finish it on day one with a phone call. All of that was garbage and bullshit. The mechanism that has been used was talked about in the Biden administration. This is not some new, great, creative way. This is just a mechanism for moving American military hardware to theater. And in fact, that hardware is sitting in theater. It just needed to be released from, I think it was in Poland, the Patriots, and they can move it over to Ukraine. So kudos. They're figuring it out that we actually have assets that we can use to support an American ally. But here's the tell, and this is why, call me skeptical. I'm pleased that it's happened, but skeptical, because in the same breath, he's going to give Putin 50 days, 50 days. And then those sanctions are going to come out. Now, we talked about sanctions, I think, before. The way sanctions work, it's sort of like a diminishing asset. It's sort of like if you go running and you do a 5K and you're great, and you're like, well, I don't have to run for another week. You're going to not run so well the following week if you hadn't practiced throughout. It's diminishing. Your body diminishes. It doesn't hold that wind that you had in that 5K run. Well, sanctions, you have them, but they diminish. So you need to keep them moving, keep on inserting them. We haven't added any new sanctions on Russia in the 6 months he's been in. And there's a major bill that 85 senators support, including many leading Republicans who are close to Trump. And it's a powerful bill. And he didn't call for it to be sent. In fact, he's trying to water it down and negotiate a clause in there that gives complete waiver authority to the president, which means that there's no, and I'm sorry, just technically, language in congressional bills, you basically have may have or shall have. May or shall. That's the very big difference in the bills. So if you shall, that means Congress is writing law that this must be done. If you may, it means it could be done. It's up to the executive. And basically, that's what we're talking about here. So they're going to pass this bill that if Trump gets what he wants, but he may or may not actually do the sanctions. So wiggle room is as big as the parting of the Red Sea. And so I don't really buy it that he's gotten tough, but I think he's typically trying to say maybe getting humiliated like this on a perpetual basis is starting to not work. And also, the reality is that the Europeans and Ukrainians aren't letting him out of it. And this goes to something we talked about before, which is the theory for Trump and his team, and you saw it in that White House Oval Office shout down, is they could bully Ukraine into capitulation and end the war that way. And that theory has clearly failed. You couldn't
Yeah.
bully them in. They ain't going anywhere, thankfully. And so now he actually has to do the hard work of diplomacy. And fortunately, again, we have a very robust, strong diplomatic corps that can engage multiple allies with the same message, note the sarcasm, to really win.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So the theory failed. Ukraine ain't quitting. Europe's not quitting. In fact, Europe may have gotten Trump, NATO to kind of like think a little differently, which is to their credit. But we're not there yet.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was having this conversation with Tom Malinowski too about that on the heels of that meeting, because it correct me if is it Ruta? Is that how you say his name? The
Nicely done.
Secretary General of NATO, right? That's a Ruta. Okay, so Ruta's gotten some shit because he's called him daddy. Right. He went down to Mar-a-Lago to meet with him very early on. But what you and I've talked about related to Netanyahu knowing how to play Donald Trump, and it's not fucking hard because the whole world has gotten smarter at how to figure him out. I mean, look, Taco and the markets have gotten smarter at how to fucking figure out what Taco does. And so they don't react as volatilely to his bullshit tariff maneuvers either, because everybody's figuring out that, like, oh, he might say something, but if we just kind of, if we're the last person in the room or we stroke his ego just enough, then we can manipulate him. Zelensky's been good at that. I mean, in the meeting they had
Oh
at the
yeah,
Vatican,
he's in them
etc.
out too.
Right. So I want to talk about Ruta for a second because he's he's pretty fucking smart because
Pretty
the way
fucking
to
smart.
manipulate Trump is to flatter him, but make him think he's personally getting something, right? You got to make him think that he's getting something out of this because there's nothing of any interest in anything he ever does if it doesn't benefit him personally. So stroke his ego a little bit and then say, oh, we're going to pay the United States many billions of dollars and thank you, Donald Trump, for doing this. And he looks like he puffs out his chest and he thinks he looks like a tough guy. But what do you think about how Ruta's handled Donald Trump?
All right, yeah, because we're us and we're talking and it's Substack Live. I'm going to go there in this one. So, uh, uh, I'll put it this way: in 2017, 2018, when Donald Trump engaged Europeans, there were people like Angela Merkel facing him. Notice that there are no Angela Merkels in the room now. There are tall, white, muscular-looking men
Yeah.
in the room around him.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
All of them. And if there's one thing we know, it's that these guys Trump likes. And these are deferential, tall, white, muscular-looking
Jesus.
European
Right.
men
You're right.
with a very powerful military, and he's impressed. And they don't bother him, and they don't irritate him, and they don't make him think that he's getting lectured and,
Or be
you
looked down
know,
on.
pushed and prodded and fingered. And so I think there's a lot going on there. And I admit it, when I watched the first presser, I watched it, I'm like, oh yeah, they got the 6'5", like Northern European men walking in really firm. They know what they're doing.
Mm. Yeah. He's not difficult. He's not difficult to manipulate. I mean, he's an idiot, right? He's a narcissistic idiot.
They got their mark. And
Yeah.
so, I will say, getting the 5% commitment out of NATO, that was a Ruta special. That was very important, very powerful. And yes, this is a thing that Trump has been pushing for. He's not the first to do it. Joe Biden actually saw the number of countries increase their GDP percentage commitments to NATO increase from 6 to 18 countries. So this is not as if it came out of nowhere. There's been a trend like this. And I think they understood, like the Gulf states when they had to pay, right? So they paid. How did they pay? They paid, at least what we know publicly, is
Yeah.
they paid
In airplanes.
in airplanes. They paid by investing, right? Theoretically, hundreds of billions of dollars in the American economy.
Yeah.
How did NATO pay? NATO paid by basically investing their own GDPs into defense at NATO, right? So other people giving up the money. So that's it. But I really do think the personality, I really do think the tall, white, stiff back, chest out, powerful European men made a big difference in this. And I think Trump likes being in that club.
Yeah, and it's funny to watch. Like someone mentioned Mark Carney in the chat because I'm a big fan of Mark Carney's, and also Mark Carney kind of knows how to play Donald Trump. I mean,
And what does he look like?
right?
He looks like a very serious, strong, white male financier dude.
Yeah,
And he's respectful enough, but he's also not a wuss
right,
by any stretch.
right. No,
But
not
but
at all.
not at all. So there's that. But I think we need to. I was thinking about how to talk about this. I wrote a Substack about the Russia thing. I think we need to really monitor this closely because this has all the potential of a bob and weave and sort of you know a kind of a misdirection to try to reframe him as a global leader while he's devastating and decimating our soft power and our diplomacy. And even the Ukrainians were very cautious about their reception. Like, great. It's kind of like we've been down this road before, and it's like to your point with the markets and the tariffs. Okay, we've been down this road before, and the thing that keeps coming to mind is like the boy who cried wolf,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Like at a certain point, people stop listening to you, and this in an international, and this is why we're doing this, and why I'm so grateful to you, Joe, for doing this kind of a show and kind of a live, and I love how you care about America's role in the world, and I think for the audience to have the opportunity to have a straight talk like this with us, it's to me, it's really inspiring. And I think for us, as we think as people in the world, we have to think like, what do we want the world to think about us? I know it sounds soft and wimpy, but like, actually, it matters. Like,
yeah,
what do we want the world to think about us? And do they basically want to look at us and think whatever they say is irrelevant? We don't care. They're obnoxious. We don't want them in our country because that's where we're going, right? And so when you have a leader who constantly is crying wolf, basically the world's tuning out. And the world is tuning out. It is happening. The world is tuning out. Now we're so big, it's hard to ignore us, but the world is tuning out and it's trending in that direction because of all of what we're talking about.
yeah, and keeping an eye on what's happening as it pertains to Ukraine is important for a lot of reasons. But I would like very much to see if Putin has tuned him out too, because it sure as hell feels that way. And he doesn't seem like we've discussed. He doesn't seem to give a shit about what Donald Trump is threatening in 50 days, and he doesn't seem to give a shit about what Lindsey Graham and Blumenthal are trying to pass in the Senate. Which, by the way, isn't another fluffer for Donald Trump because Lindsey Graham wants Trump to be able to be in charge of whatever secondary tariffs or secondary
Yes.
sanctions come out of this, right? So it's up to you, Donald. But it doesn't seem like Putin is taking. I mean, seriously. So he's whispering it into his taint at night. Like Putin doesn't give a shit. Putin doesn't give a
No,
shit. And in
no.
50 days, I don't. Do you think that there'll be a change at all? In what's going on over
Well, John Kerry, when he was a young guy after Vietnam, testified to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and essentially had this line of, how can you be the last person to die for a bad decision? That was
there?
basically it. And so it's like, how can we allow the kind of destruction over the next 50 days that's going to happen? Like, why do we wait?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why are we letting Ukraine get bombed for 50 days and then we'll decide to like put on more powerful sanctions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Doesn't make
Why
any
not
sense.
now?
Right.
Why not now? If
Right.
you really are saying you have a different policy on Russia and it needs to change, and you have strong bipartisan congressional backing, bicameral,
Yeah.
you know, joint executive legislative thinking, why not now? And so to me, what this is showing actually is how much of an outlier Trump is, an extreme outlier in American public policy, in politics, in the Republican Party on Russia. So this is sort of a bob and weave. This is sort of showing I'm getting a little tougher and all, but it's not, don't buy it. There is no answer as to why not now. I want somebody to ask Caroline Leavitt, why not now?
Yeah.
Why does he think 50 days from now that somehow that's going to fix it? You do it now, and then you say, if you're not done in 50 days, I'll keep it going. But if you're done, then I'll withdraw it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Excellent
it's
point.
really it's not an exercise in power. It's an exercise in platitude.
Yeah.
Um, and you know, it's we're not going to get these sanctions passed before the August recess. They're not. I don't. Maybe it'll pass in one chamber and then they'll sit on it. But it ain't going to become law before August, and that means not until mid-September. So that's already basically like the 50 days.
And
And then
Putin
in
can do it.
September, you know, it's
Yeah.
like eons away. Things happen. Things happen.
In the meantime, yeah, Putin is just going to keep bombing the shit out of them.
And that's the point. He's
Yeah.
just going to keep on hitting, and he's going to hit at a rapidly increasing rate with drones and missiles. His missiles cost about $1 million a pop. Our Patriot missile battery responses are $4 million a pop. So he can just continue to toss missiles and blow up our budget and the Patriots and financially come out ahead, and it doesn't cost him anything. China, North Korea, Iran sees this. China sees this, and they think, yeah, that Taiwan target's looking better and better by the day.
Yeah.
You know, that this is the kind of image that we're creating because of this dithering on Russia policy. And that's the word I think I would like to use publicly. It's dithering. It's navel gazing. It's not peace through strength at all.
Just like he dithered on COVID in the first season of this shit show. I mean, this is not leadership, and how anybody out there doesn't see that. I mean, I just don't understand. But back to your point about having these conversations, and I will admit, like, you know, I always say this, you're my phone a friend, that this is stuff that is above my pay grade. You know, these are things that I don't inherently and naturally understand, but what I do understand is that these are fucking important things to talk about. And so I know I have a question every minute of the day that I'm like, Joel, I should ask Joel. I wonder what Joel says. I wonder what Joel would think about this. And I want to have those conversations with you because I know that I can't be alone out there. I know a lot of people in this chat are very well versed in a lot of this stuff, but I know a lot of people have a lot of questions like I do, and they want to hear from somebody who can explain them like you do. So that's why this is such an important ongoing conversation, because I get to be the novice who's like, excuse me, Mr. Cotta, I don't understand. You know, like I'm going to keep bugging you and pinging you and poking you, and I'm not going to finger you like you said Donald Trump is fingering somebody or somebody's fingering Trump. I forget, but you said fingering and I laughed.
I'm not commenting on that one.
Okay. So anyway, right. We're gonna stick a fork in that and move on. But that's why these conversations are so important. I'm sweating and got very hot out here all of a sudden. So but yeah, we're normally gonna have foreign policy Fridays. This is a foreign policy Saturday because of my daughter's orthodontist. And if anybody has any tips for how to get their 12-year-old daughter to wear her bands, somebody please, every time we go to the orthodontist, she goes, you know, she's not wearing her bands. It's like, yes, I know. Other than physically putting them in her mouth, I don't know what to do. I cannot force my 12-year-old daughter to wear.
I have no advice on that. I have 3 daughters, and I have no advice on that.
I just between that and she's got to use this foot cream for her foot, and she's like, we go to the orthopedist, and the orthopedist is like, why isn't she using the cream? I'm like, listen, that's not short of like tying her down. And anyway.
I can't imagine that you have a rebellious daughter, Joe. I would never have imagined that.
I don't know where she comes from. She came, the store delivered her because she's clearly, my dad didn't get to meet my daughter. He's only natural born granddaughter. He said 2 step granddaughters, but he didn't get to meet his granddaughter, biological granddaughter, but he would say, I know he would say that I got the daughter I deserved because I was a
Huh.
fucking pain in the ass. But I was a pain in the ass who, by the way, Joel, just to bring this full circle, the reason these conversations are so important to me is because my dad works in the Department of Defense. My dad, for 50 plus years, my dad was very dialed in to all of this stuff, foreign policy, foreign affairs. This was like his sweet spot as a human being. And my way to talk to my dad was to talk about this stuff. So I don't want to say you remind me of my dad because that sounds weird, but these conversations remind me of my drives to college in Boston for 4.5 hours where my dad and I would talk about stuff like this. And I would ask him to explain things that I didn't understand because I understood enough to know that they were important. So that's exactly why I love talking to you so much. Not to mention that I just enjoy you as a human being, but you help me understand things that I otherwise wouldn't. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And thanks for doing that for both of our audiences. And guys, Joel's on Substack at the Briefing Book, but you'll also see him on MSNBC, on CNN.
Once in a while. Yeah.
On BBC, on all the places. Joel is the reason that so many people go to him to explain this stuff is because nobody does it better. So I am so blessed that you do this
Oh,
and
you
that
made
our
my day.
audiences get to experience it.
You made my day. Thanks, Joe. Brilliant discussion. Thanks everybody for dialing in. Please pay attention to all these international issues. They matter. And Joe, just hats off to you for what you're building and what you've built, and for making this fun. And your dad would be proud. Your dad would be proud.
Well, he would also say John because he spoke with a broken accent. And one time, I'll tell this real quick story just to make like my dad came here when he was a teenager from Lebanon, and he ended up getting a full ride scholarship to college for soccer. And then his entire adult life, he worked for the Department of Defense because he believed in that shining city on a hill, and he wanted to repay what this country had given him back to this country. So all of my siblings have served, et cetera, et cetera. Not me, because I knew enough to know that I was too stubborn and too fucking pig-headed for the military, though I have the greatest respect in the whole. It is true. My dad would tell you. My dad would tell you, like, no, she was not. She was not cut out for service. But he had a broken accent until he passed when he was 76. And one time for Thanksgiving, I said, Dad, what are we doing for Thanksgiving? And he said, Joanne, we're gonna eat my sisters. And so that's how my dad talked. Dad, rest in peace. I love you. I know I was a pain in your ass, but look, it's all worked out, and hopefully working out. And I'm still having those conversations, Dad. The kind of conversations that we had in the car. But anyway, long digression there.
It's
So thank you.
awesome.
Thank
It's
you,
great.
Joe. Yeah. And thanks to everybody with 1,000 people on right now and in the middle of the
Awesome.
Saturday.
Thank
So
you,
that's
everyone.
awesome. Yeah, look for this usually every Friday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, but we will keep you aware if we need to change. And thanks for jumping on today. 1,100 people now, Joel. How the heck that is? But thank you, thank you, thank you to everybody, and have an amazing Saturday. And just another plug while I'm on, my friends at the Seneca Project, Tara Mayer and Michelle Kinney, they have a new ad out about how one of the other things that happened with this rescission bill is that they defunded PBS and NPR, but the PBS component is an emotional one for a lot of people. And they made an incredible ad about that. And I'm going to post about it on my Substack. I'm not going to ugly cry, but please, 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 please go find that ad. You can look for it on my Substack, on all the socials, the Seneca Project. We need to fund groups like theirs. Their content, it changes minds and hearts. So please go check that out. And I just want to end with that.
That's great. You did that. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
By the way, now I know I'm elongating us. I know it's a slow goodbye, but I got to tell you, NPR educated me as a young person growing up and learning about the world, reading the news, but listening to that radio and the global presence it has. And I'm really worried about that just being one more retreat from the world and understanding the world. The people who worked there, the reporters over the years, genius at explaining things and bringing out information. And I think that's probably why it got cut.
Oh, agreed. 100%. And they're going to be deserts that are already exist, but they're going to be exacerbated. They're going to be information deserts in this country where these kinds of conversations, Joel, that NPR was having, where somebody in a small rural section of a red state could
Right.
access this kind of conversation on an NPR, not biased, not propaganda, factual reporting.
Yeah.
They can't get that. They won't be able to get that. Well, we got to fund NPR, but it's a massive task. But you're right. The whole agenda here, the whole point here is so that there's less information, so that they can control the information, because they're not just cutting the information; they're also coming in and filling it with their propaganda and their Sinclair news groups and their Foxes and OANs and Newsmax shit and all that. So we have to have these conversations all the time, and I think that for now anyway, this can help to stem the tide of what they're trying to accomplish. I mean, that is my true goal. And a lot of people will say that PBS shaped their lives and shaped their perspectives and their outlooks, and in the same way that NPR did. So, yeah,
Hey, I grew up in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood in Squirrel Hill in Pittsburgh, you know? I mean, come on.
you grew up in his actual neighborhood.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
God, you were the people in his neighborhood.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
were
I
his
would see him
neighbor.
walking around. Yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
God, I didn't know that. I
Pittsburgh.
know you
Yeah,
from Pittsburgh, but I didn't know that.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Bury the lead, dude. That's crazy. How cool is that? And I didn't know this. And guys, maybe you knew this, Joel. Maybe you knew this, but I didn't know Mr. Rogers was a registered Republican. Did you know
Of
that?
course, I'm not surprised.
I didn't know.
He was a very reasonable, moderate, you know,
Yeah.
but he was a person who cared about everybody, obviously, and in many ways, he's very Pittsburgh. But yeah, grew up, you know, and I could. He had this great moment. I'm not going to recall it by detail, but where he gave testimony to Congress about the need to maintain the support and the funding and why it mattered in educating children, and we should dust that off and show that again because that
That's in the
matters.
Seneca ad.
Okay,
That is exactly what Michelle Kinney, she's a genius. She takes that hearing and she takes that exact exchange where the Republican senator says, "Oh, well, I think you just got your $20 million, sir," because Mr. Rogers was able to
right.
convince them that it was worth the investment. And now here we are 55 years later, which is a shocking number, but it is 55 years later, and they have defunded PBS. And it's like, who are we? Let's remember who we are, okay? Like, let's find that inner compass, that inner moral compass that we all still have. I don't get stung by a bee. Okay. Well, with that, guys, please go to Joel, subscribe, check out all of his amazing content. Go to the Seneca Project, everywhere on YouTube, online, etc. And please look for my Substack today. Are you kidding me? Obviously, you're here, but I'm going to be writing about the original question that Michelle asks in this ad when Mr. Rogers said that one question children ask him is, "What do you do with your mad?" And what we do with our mad is we have conversations like these. We have conversations that lift all boats, that educate and enlighten. And what they do with their mad is they take it out on people and places and institutions that they don't like. And this is the fight that we are in right now. So please check all of that out. And please have an amazing Saturday and a beautiful Sunday. And yeah, that's it. So thank you so much, Joel. And thanks everybody for tuning in
Likewise,
and
Joe.
marching
Thanks,
on.
Joe.
Okay.
Thanks,
Well,
everybody.
bye. We'll see you next time.